We're joined by John Connors, an award-winning actor who you'll all be very familiar with from Love Hate. He's here though today to talk to us about a situation that's developing among the travelling community in Darrendale where he lives. So John, thanks very much for joining us today. First of all, can you explain to us what exactly is going on with the council and your family and community in Darrendale?
So specifically with my family, we haven't had any notification papers of eviction or anything like that, although we are worried about it. But I thought to get some work done before any of that would ever happen. And irregardless of my family, because I don't think we'd be evicted because we're there 20 years, I'm worried about all travellers from Dublin who are in illegal encampments, as they say. So a tender document was published by the Dublin City Council, and all the councils, the 4 councils have gotten together and agreed on an action plan to remove all travellers from illegal encampments and to take their horses and forcibly remove them. And they plan on hiring a security company that will do this 7 days a week. So they're basically trying to tear apart our family, because that's what we're obsessed with. Family. We live and die for each other. We live around each other. That's something that goes back to old ancient Ireland, the ancient Tua clan culture that we did have. And it's one of the last remnants of Gaelic Ireland. And a lot of people don't realise this. And they're trying to break that up. So
are these private sites you're on?
Oh, like on private land?
Yeah.
A lot of time it's council land. Like ours is council land. We're there 20 years. We were told already before by council we can't be moved. We've squatters' rights. But the bigger picture is all other travellers, and who are mostly living on council lands. And we're really worried. I've gotten a lot of travellers who have gotten in touch with me on Facebook because I put up a Facebook post. I got a lot of traction. I think that's where we were in touch. And a lot of travellers are very worried because we're in the worst homeless crisis we've ever had. And the first port to call from these so-called lefties who were just elected in Europe is to create a mass eviction of travellers.
And so this is coming from Europe?
Yeah, well, it's all the recently elected councillors and stuff like so. Yeah. So there's this plan is going ahead, and where are these travellers going to go? If they're telling us if they're telling us we have no houses for people, and it's 10,000+ people who are homeless, where are they going to go? What's going to happen? Is it a matter of moving travellers just out of their districts so that we just move outside Dublin? Because this has happened over and over throughout our history, where one council will throw the problem onto another council because we were always considered the problem. And in the 1963 report on itinerancy, where Charlie High talked about us as a problem, and I'm going to quote him when he said, "We're looking for the final solution to the itinerant problem." And people in the ministers, TDs, councillors made suggestions in that commission to deal with travellers in different ways, like sterilise the women, castrate the men, put them on Spike Island, take their kids away from them. These were suggestions that were made. Some of them did happen. Stuff with fertility with travellers, but there's a lot of controversy that surrounded that. And with traveller children being taken away, they were taken away at a higher proportional rate than settled kids. So we've seen that sort of things happen, and we're seeing the sort of ramifications of that and the result of those things that have happened over generations. But now what's interesting is this plan of action to remove travellers from camps is actually now the final solution. It's just that they word things a lot easier now, a lot better, because they've chipped away so much from us anyway, and they split up so many of us and thrown us into social housings and separated us from our community that has added to our suicide rate, which is the highest suicide rate in the world. 11% of travellers die by suicide. And now they want to just take away the last thing we'll be having, which is family.
And how many sites and people might we be talking about in the Dublin area?
Honestly, I don't have an estimate, but I can tell you this alone: on my little half-mile stretch of a lane, there's about 300 travellers living there.
So it's going to be a lot of people.
That's just one lane, and one lane in Coolock, and Coolock has the biggest population of travellers in Ireland in one district. And that's just one district in Dublin. So you're talking about the south side, you're talking about other areas, you're talking about Finglas, you're talking about Ballymun. Who knows?
And this has all been arranged by Dublin councillors, essentially?
Yeah, all the 4 councils got together. And it's a plan, it hasn't even been voted on yet. I just met with Anthony Flynn, and he's told me it hasn't been voted on since he got elected a few weeks back, unless it was something that was inherited from the last council, in which he would not have been notified by it. So we're hoping that we can progress this and make them vote on it, because if we can make them vote on it, we can make them pay for it then, because we're going to know who's going to vote against this. These people who are pro-equality and pro-this and pro-that and all about liberal Ireland, but want to evict hundreds of traveller families and leave children homeless. And where are we going to go? I already have family members living in hotels because our sites became overcrowded, because our birth rate is so high. So the next generation comes around, there's like 20 more people and then their families. And I have like a number of cousins, like 6 sets of cousins that are living in hotel rooms already, in one room with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 kids sometimes. So we're already seeing this, and travellers are 7 times more likely to be homeless. And now they're going to create mass evictions. Look, forget about it being discrimination and this, that and the other, which is obvious. That's the obvious thing to point out. Above all, this is nonsensical. It doesn't make sense to them. And they're already under extreme pressure from this homeless crisis. And this is the way of dealing with it. It seems mad to me, and it's a national disgrace.
And it must be causing a lot of worry among families that are beside
so much anxiety. Like everybody who lives on my lane, most of them are my family, and then there's one separate family, the Gavins, who are a huge group. They probably have 100 living in their camp. They're very worried, and they've all gotten in touch with me saying, "What can you do better, John? Can you help us?" And we'll help, and we'll all stand together. And I said, absolutely. So I've kind of taken it upon myself to use my profile, because if I don't do it, no one else is going to do it. And a part of it is reaching out to people like yourself and people in the media, and also politicians and councillors and TDs. There's Anthony Flynn has gotten in touch with me. Paddy Houlihan has been recently elected, and I'm going to go on his podcast. And also Pater Tobin got in touch with me. So we're trying to get as much political support and make a big deal out of this. And I'm just hoping people will stand with us, because I've been involved in so many different movements outside of traveller rights for the last 10 years. A lot of them were stuff that didn't affect me directly, but I felt I had to get involved. One with abortion, stuff with homeless stuff with refugee stuff. And now I'm hoping that people stand with us. That's what I'm hoping. I think this can be something that can bring travellers together and create unity between travellers and settled people as well.
And what's it like in the settlements, the camps and sites? Is there a sense of solidarity and camaraderie there in general?
Absolutely. Like, you know, it's hard for me to even look objectively at that. Only when I moved out into a house for a few years, I realised I got really badly depressed, because I was surrounded by these strangers who didn't want to know us, who, you know, there's a thin wall between you and them, and they're shouting, and there's all this different stuff that's going on, and it's just weird, and they don't want to look at you, don't want to talk to you, there's no sense of community. Whereas in my camp, we don't lock our doors, ever. That's ignorant to lock your doors. You always invite family and friends in, always. You sit down, you have your cups of tea, everybody looks after each other, you look after each other, you give each other sugar, milk if you need it. You know, we get together, we put a fire on outside in the camp, a big bonfire. We have chats, we tell stories. I listen to the older people who are like Shanachis in my family, who can tell you stories going back hundreds of years, stuff that's mythological, old ghost stories and banshees. This is where I grew up, leprechauns and fairies, and people might laugh at that, but that is a part of our culture, and they're important, and it's a part of Irish culture, you know. And we have sing-songs regularly, and if anybody's birthday, we'll have a big huge sing-song, and I get people like Damien Dempsey down to the camp, who's a good friend of mine, and we sing until 6 o'clock in the morning, just singing ballads and stuff, and this is our culture. And I mean, I think it's all been attacked, you know, and the camp is a facility in which we can do all that, because we're amongst each other, and we can look after each other and keep what's important, you know, which is the family and the way we look after each other, and our sense of community, which goes right back to Gaelic Ireland. One of the main objectives of British colonialism was to destroy the Gaelic sense of community. If you look back at the documents going back to the reconquest of Ireland, that was one of their objectives, because they wanted to create individuals who would settle, because 2/3 of the Irish population were nomadic 500 years ago, individuals who would settle so they'd pay the tax to the king or queen. And if they were individuals, they wouldn't be worrying about community, and they'd start getting more selfish. So this is going way back. People need to have a historical context for this.
And John, for you, who obviously values traveller culture so much, does it hurt that as an Irishman there seems to be continuously animosity towards people in the travelling community among establishment figures, as well as there being a certain percentage of people who don't like travellers?
Yeah, I mean, when you see, you know, Peter Casey talking about if he became president, what he would have done, this is the day of the election, he would have put them all in Phoenix Park. That's what he said, and created this one community and educated them and this and that and cleaned them up and all that. And that's totally accepted. People like Phil Hogan promising his constituents and Josephina Madigan that they wouldn't allow travellers to move in. You've had judges call travellers knackers. I mean, you can literally say whatever you want about travellers in public discourse, and nothing will happen if you're an elected official, if you're a judge. It doesn't matter. There will be no consequence to it. In the media, the exact same. If you were to do that about someone from Nigerian heritage or Polish or whatever, you would be a xenophobe or racist, and you would not only have to resign from your job, you'd have to apologise. So looking at this, like there's a new UN report that shows the travellers are by far the most discriminated against group in Ireland. And the European Council just said the exact same thing, worse than refugees. So I want to know where the buck stops, because they've pressed so many buttons here, and what they don't know is they're opening up a can of worms. Because if they're going to come and bring violence to our door, we're going to be peaceful until they're not going to be peaceful. And they're going to be met with resistance. And I'm actually going to plead to these people, the councillors, to overturn their plan because they don't know what's going to happen. And what's going to happen is not going to be good for anybody in Ireland, and not for them, because they're the ones who are instigating the whole situation.
And no one wants violence, ultimately.
No one wants violence, but we're not going to take any more. Now, I don't want violence, but if they come into my camp armed and looking to forcibly remove my mother and my grandmother, my grandfather just died, and his wish was to die in that camp. That's what he said. When the property developer came and offered us money, we said no, because he said, I'm going to die in this camp. The only way I'm leaving this is in a coffin. And he left it in a coffin. And my grandmother has said the same thing.
And is that what it's about, that maybe a property developer wants to come in and buy this land from the council?
Well, with our camp specifically, that's totally what it's about. And actually, the local council were in cahoots with them. And they said they would offer us social housing if we wanted it, if they didn't want to take the money, or if we wanted to take the money, still offers it, which is totally corrupt. They're not even allowed to do that. We'd local Gardaí trying to threaten us. We'd ERU coming in, raiding our camp and putting guns to my mother, my brother, my cousins' heads, threatening to blow their heads off. That night we get a phone call off the superintendent of Coolock Garda Station, who tells us to get out within 24 hours. Yet he'd no right to do that, legally no right, because he's with the property developer. This is no conspiracy. It is a conspiracy, but it's not a theory. It's the truth. It's a fact. This has happened over and over. And when you study traveller history, you see this sort of thing happening and happening. Travellers are always put in a place that is separated between them and the settled community. It's always the edge of a town or an edge of a suburb, the edge of the city. Never in the middle, always away, always a separation. So you grow up with that separation. Then what happens is 10, 20 years pass, and suddenly that land is now desirable, and we have to move you off that land so we can come in and build a Facebook or Google. This is what's happening. And in Coolock right now, they want to build a second city. The property developer told me himself and showed me his plans and to bring in a Facebook and a Google and build a second city in Dublin, because he thought we were going to go along with it and take the money. Well, we didn't take the money, and we're not going to take the money.
Because you can't be bought.
No, we can't be bought. Not at all. What's money going to do? What, for all of us to separate and have no family? This is not at all. It's not going to happen. Any traveller that are living separate to the family are way higher for drug addiction, drink addiction, alcohol addiction, suicide, all that. Because we grow up with that. That's what we have as our family network, our support. We live and die with each other. And we don't want that to change.
I'm shocked to hear that the Gardaí were so aggressive towards you, and hadn't heard of them. I'm sure a lot of other people haven't.
To be honest with you, I'm not acting like a hero, but I wish I was there that day, because they would have had to blow my head off. They honestly would have had to blow my head off, because I was so angry when I came back and heard my mother's head was put into a puddle of water, and they threatened to blow her head off with an assault rifle, the emergency response unit. You know, this is crazy, saying that they were coming in looking for guns and didn't have a search warrant for my camp, had a search warrant for another camp. Like, it's illegal, you know what I mean? Honestly, I wanted to go and do the sue thing, and I went and seen solicitors, and my family just asked me not to do it because they just don't want any more hassle, because that's how ingrained we have the fear of Gardaí in our community.
And what can people do who are listening to this and are fearful for yourselves and Darndale that you might be evicted?
Well, what I would say to the settled community, because we need their support on this, is that if this is something that actually concerns you, and if you're someone who's been banging on about homelessness and stuff, which I have been doing for years, well, we're going to be homeless soon as well, a lot of us. And if you care, write to your local councillor and tell them you disagree with it. Get on social media, make your views known. The more traction and energy that is brought out against this is definitely going to help. And when it comes for a time to stand and protest, come along and help us. Let's stand together. Let's bring the communities together, you know. I've stood with many settled people in many different movements, and I hope that I get settled people standing with me.
And so what is the atmosphere just at the moment in your site and in others about this particular issue?
So my site are less worried because we know we're there 20 years and it's going to be really hard to move us. But all the rest of my lane are very nervous, and they're worried for their kids. They're worried about they're there in Darndale. They have the children in the school in Darndale and Our Lady Immaculate. They're worrying about what's going to happen there, and what's going to happen when they have no address. Then you know what I mean. Everything gets really complicated, and they don't know where to go because they can't move then to Fingal and just find a place. There's nowhere to go. And these people are settled here in land that didn't want to be owned by anybody for so long, and we moved into a wasteland when we moved there. It was a wasteland that the local kids in Darndale used to use as a joyriding track. No one wanted it. And now the land is getting more valuable and everything's built up, and they've built the Hilton, they built all the Costa coffees and Starbucks, and now everything's getting all hip and cool, and now they want the knackers out. That's just the reality of it.
And it seems to be a reality that's replicated in different ways where in other parts of the country whereby areas are becoming gentrified, as they say.
Oh, totally. And rents are going through the roof. And I think they finally put a rental cap on it just a few months back after Sinn Féin calling for it for years and other parties and people for profit. They finally put a rental cap. I think that you're going to be allowed to put it up 4% each year. But some of the rents are already $3,000 in some places. And I have a friend paying $4,500 rent a month. Now he has the money. He's one of them fellas. But there's people who don't have the money. You know, I seen an advertisement to share a bed with a person. To share a bed for £400 a month. Are we crazy? How are we allowing this to happen? And we keep voting in the same people. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. You know, they're the same cheeks of the same arse. You know what I mean? Two cheeks of the same arse. But the unfortunate is there's not enough, you know, worthy opposition anyway. I think it's really messed up, man. We really have to do something because this homeless crisis was supposed to subside a long time ago. And during Apollo House, which was something I was involved in, I think we were at 5,000 or 6,000 people was homeless, and now and they promised by summer then that was going to that there was going to be no one homeless. This was Simon Coveney. There was the promise Simon Coveney made all my colleagues that were involved in that, and now we've 10,000 plus, and there's some figures saying there's actually 15,000. So it's crazy, and where's it going to stop? But we're not going to take it, and that's the reality of it. So I'm just hoping that the message gets out there that this is going to have serious ramifications. Like when a war comes to you, what are you going to do? You have two choices. You can bow down or you can fight back. We don't bow down to nobody, and there's no quitting us.
And they're lucky to have you, really, aren't they, that you have a media platform there?
Really lucky, because the message wouldn't get out there. Unfortunately, nowadays it takes a profile to get out there, you know what I mean? So I use that in every single opportunity I can. When I seen this, I was so angry last night. I did me play last night, and I went up and met a friend in Portobello just to talk about a script I was doing. And I was so angry at so much energy. I walked from fucking Portobello back to Coolock. It's like 13 miles or something. Because I just had so much energy. So they really had to put a spark under my arse, because I've been a little bit quiet lately, and now I'm ready to go. You know, I'm ready to go, but I want them to vote on this so we can hold them accountable. And I want to be there when they're about to vote. I want to have my say for my people and represent my people, because our organisations don't represent us. They're paid by the state. They have a very mixed message. They're not very truthful about our culture, where we're from, what we do, what we believe in. They've sort of radicalised, when you go into the universities and stuff, a lot of them radicalised and forgot who they were and taken stances that our community don't take. So my whole community feel disenfranchised and disconnected to our organisation. So it takes someone like me, like a Cindy Joyce is another brilliant person, so to speak for us, who's going to convey the real message, you know, and what we really feel.
Well, John, you have a great leader in yourself.
Thank you, man.
I'm convinced of that, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks for having me as well, man.
Thank you.